Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we step into a world of marble temples, sun-drenched olive groves, and a life you probably won't find in the history books you slept through in school. We're heading to ancient Athens, a city of towering intellect and profound contradiction, to follow the life of a young man who was both a work of art and a possession. His story isn't one of grand battles or philosophical breakthroughs, but of quiet survival and profound longing. It's a reality check on the idea of Greek liberty. It was a luxury reserved for a precious few. You'll hear things that challenge what you think you know about this celebrated civilization. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments below and the local time. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a small boy in the heart of Athens, and your earliest memories are not of grand, columned halls, but of the sun-baked dust on the unpaved streets of your neighbourhood. Your name is Lycidas, a name that, in a language that would one day be dead to most, means son of a wolf. It's a name that hints at wildness, at strength, but it's one that will soon be just a whisper in the wind. Your days are spent chasing stray dogs, practicing the simple rhythms of a shepherd's flute, and learning your letters from a stern but not unkind tutor. Your world is small and manageable. You feel the rough wool of your tunic on your skin, the cool clay of the water jug against your cheek, the heavy weight of your father's hand on your shoulder in a gesture of simple, unburdened pride. There is nothing particularly remarkable about your family. You're not from the aristocracy, Eupatridae, with their inherited lands and political clout. Nor are you a slave, bought and sold in the marketplace. Your father is a craftsman, a skilled sandal maker, his hands calloused from years of shaping leather. Your mother weaves intricate patterns on her loom, the rhythmic click-clack a constant soundtrack to your childhood. You live in a modest house, with a small central courtyard open to the sky, where the scent of baking bread and fresh leather mingles. It's a simple life, yes, but it is yours. You are a freeborn Athenian citizen, a title that carries with it the promise of a vote, of a voice, of a future. But the world of ancient Greece, for all its beauty and philosophy, is a harsh and unforgiving place. It's built on a foundation of debt and obligation, a system that can, with a single bad harvest or a misjudged investment, shatter a family's security. Your father, a man of simple ambition, made a bad business deal. He loaned a substantial sum to a merchant who was shipwrecked off the coast of Crete. His cargo lost to the unforgiving sea. The debt, once a manageable burden, became an anchor dragging your family down. The sandal business, once steady, now feels like a sieve, and every drachma that comes in seems to vanish into the hands of creditors. You hear the hushed, anxious whispers at night, the clinking of coins on the table, the long drawn-out sighs that fill the silence. You don't understand the specifics, of course, you're just a boy, but you feel the chill of it in the air, a cold wind blowing through the warmth of your home. Historians still argue whether the concept of debt slavery was as common in classical Athens as it was in earlier Greek city-states, but the reality for your family is that the shadow of destitution hangs heavy. It's a bizarre sort of paradox, isn't it? A society that gave us democracy and philosophy also had a very pragmatic, very brutal approach to financial ruin. A free man could lose everything, and if he had nothing else to sell, he might sell what he had of value. And in a society where a beautiful son was often seen as a gift from the gods, a handsome boy was, in a twisted and heartbreaking way, a valuable asset. The ancient Greek world, as a mainstream historical fact, had a complex and often contradictory relationship with what we would call childhood. It was a time for education and preparation, but also a period when a child, especially one from a less prosperous family, could be seen as an economic resource. Your father is not a cruel man. He loves you, in his quiet, uncommunicative way, but he is a desperate man. The day it happens is a day like any other. The sun is high, the air thick with the scent of olive oil and dried herbs. Your father calls you into the courtyard. His face is pale, his eyes hollowed out with a sadness you've never seen before. He doesn't look at you directly, but at a spot just over your shoulder. You stand there, fidgeting, wondering if you've done something wrong. You notice a man standing in the doorway, a stranger you've never seen before. He's dressed in rich robes, and the scent of expensive perfume hangs in the air around him. He's not intimidating, not in a brute sort of way. but there's an unsettling stillness about him, a quiet assurance of power that makes your young heart beat a little faster. Your father's voice is a low rumble, almost a whisper. He doesn't use grand phrases. He doesn't apologize. He just explains, in simple, brutal terms, that the debt must be paid, that you have a chance to live a better life than the one that is quickly becoming impossible for your family. The stranger, a man named Lysias, is a well-respected citizen, a wealthy patron of the arts. He's looking for a boy, an Eromenos, to become his companion and his pupil, to train him in the ways of a cultured man. A bizarre, fringe tidbit of ancient Greek life is that these relationships, known as pederasty, were often seen not as purely carnal, but as a form of mentorship, with the older man, the Erastes, shaping the younger boy. It's a hard concept for us to grasp today, with our modern sensibilities, but it was an accepted part of the social fabric. You don't understand the words, you only understand the look in your mother's eyes, a silent, tearful goodbye that burns into your memory. You don't know what you're becoming. You just know you are leaving. Lysias takes your small hand in his grip gentle but firm. You turn back one last time, a knot of confusion and fear in your stomach. Your father looks away. Your mother is gone, hiding her face perhaps, so you will not remember her tears, and you are led away, a boy whose name means son of a wolf, leaving the dust of your childhood behind for a world you can't even begin to imagine. You trudge down the narrow, sun-drenched streets of Athens, your small hand held in the surprisingly soft grip of Lysias. The city is a cacophony of sounds and smells, the sharp tang of a tanner's shop, the pungent aroma of roasted lamb from a street vendor, the lowing of cattle being driven to market. You've seen these sights and heard these sounds 1,000 times, but today they feel alien, as if you were a ghost walking through your own life. You're a boy from the dusty neighbourhood of the craftsman, not from the grand villas of the city's elite. This is a journey you never imagined taking. Your father, with that final hollow look in his eyes, had done what he believed was best. He had to pay his debts, and a free citizen could not be enslaved. But the law did allow for a son to be placed in the custody of a wealthy patron, a sort of indentured servitude that was a grim, little talked about reality of Athenian life. It was a trade, your freedom and your past for a chance at a different kind of future. This is a mainstream historical fact, though it often gets glossed over in the romanticised versions of ancient Greece. The ideal of the freeborn citizen participating in the democracy was a beautiful one, but the reality was that for many that freedom was a fragile thing, easily lost to the whims of fortune or the brutal calculus of a bad business deal. You try to remember the smell of your mother's baking bread, the feel of the cool, smooth leather your father worked, but the city's vibrant life is overwhelming. You see groups of men gathered in the agora, the marketplace, debating and gesturing animatedly. You see children your age, laughing as they chase a hoop with a stick. They look so carefree, and a sharp, aching pang of loneliness pierces your young heart. You are still in your city, but you're no longer a part of it. A strange thought pops into your head, something your tutor had once mentioned. The story of Sisyphus, cursed to push a boulder up a hill forever. You feel a bit like that boulder right now, being pushed along by a force you don't understand, to a destination you don't want to go. As you walk, Lysias speaks to you in a calm, measured voice. He doesn't make small talk. He explains what will happen now, not with a sense of triumph, but with a detached sort of practicality. You will be educated, he says, far beyond what your family could ever have afforded. You will learn poetry, music, rhetoric, and philosophy. You will be taught to be a companion to a man of substance, to be a source of intellectual and aesthetic pleasure, not just a servant. You listen, your small mind trying to make sense of the words. He says that you are not his slave, not in the way a captured barbarian or a man bought at auction would be. This is a different, more nuanced form of servitude. You are his paidagogos, his pupil, his... well, he doesn't use the term eromenos yet. That word, heavy with implication, will come later. The journey feels endless, a blur of sun and shadow. You pass the Acropolis in the distance, a monument to the city's power and pride, and a peculiar, slightly nerdy thought crosses your mind. Who cleans all that marble? It's a small, insignificant question, but it's a way to distract yourself from the terrifying reality of your situation. You're Lycidas, a boy who loves to chase goats on the outskirts of town, and now you are heading to a life of refined misery. The irony of it is not lost on your young mind. A quirky, little-known tidbit about ancient Athens is that the city was, by our standards, incredibly dirty. Waste management was a loose concept, and the streets were often strewn with refuse. So while you're walking toward a life of luxury, you're still stepping over the same trash as everyone else. A nice little dose of historical realism, isn't it? The grand house finally looms into view. It's not on the main thoroughfare, but set back from the road behind a high, unadorned wall. The heavy wooden gate, banded with bronze, opens to reveal a world so unlike your own that it feels like stepping into a dream. The courtyard is not dusty earth, but a mosaic of polished pebbles, arranged in a geometric pattern. In the centre, a small fountain trickles, its gentle sound a quiet counterpoint to the city's noise. The air here is cool and still, scented with jasmine and the faint perfume of the man who holds your hand. You're led into the andron, the men's quarters of the house. The floors are a cool polished stone, and the walls are decorated with frescoes depicting scenes from the myths and heroes of Greece. The furniture is not the simple, functional wood of your home, but low couches with carved legs and plush cushions. There are shelves filled with papyrus scrolls, and the scent of old paper and ink is everywhere. You're in the house of a learned man, a man who values beauty and knowledge as much as he values wealth. This is your new home. This is your gilded cage. You're introduced to a few of the household slaves, men and women who move with a practiced, silent efficiency. They are of different nationalities, a tall, fair-haired Thracian man, a wiry Lydian woman, and they regard you with a mix of curiosity and wearied detachment. To them, you are just another new face, another mouth to feed, another cog in the machine of the household. Lysias's head slave, a grey-haired man with a kind face named Xenophon, is particularly attentive. He is a freedman, a man who had once been a slave but had earned his freedom through years of loyal service. He regards you with a look of quiet understanding, a look that says he knows exactly what you've left behind. Historians still argue whether the practice of a freedman staying with his former master was a sign of genuine loyalty, or just a necessity of economic survival, but for Xenophon it seems to be both. He takes you under his wing, showing you to a small Spartan room at the back of the house. It's clean, with a small bed and a single window that looks out onto a small walled garden. The door has no lock, a small but important detail. You're not a prisoner, but you're not free either. You're somewhere in between, in that strange liminal space between a boy's past and a man's future. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, you're given a simple tunic and led to a small washing basin. You clean the dust of the streets from your hands and face, and for the first time since you left your home, you feel the tears welling up in your eyes. This is not the dust of your childhood, the dust you used to track into your home after a long day of playing. This is the dust of a new life, a life you didn't choose, a life that has been chosen for you. You don't want to be here. You want to go back to the smell of leather and the sound of your mother's loom. You want to be Lycidas, the boy from the dusty neighbourhood. But that boy is gone. He was left behind on the unpaved streets of Athens, a ghost in a city you can no longer call your own. The tragic life of a male concubine is not just about the loss of sexual agency, but the loss of self. You're no longer Lycidas. You're about to become a different person entirely, a person moulded and shaped to fit into a world that is not your own. The first few days in Lysias's house are a blur of new sensations and unspoken rules. You move through the cool marble halls like a ghost, your bare feet making no sound on the polished stone floors. The air, once thick with the smells of your old neighbourhood, is now scented with expensive oils and burning incense. You're no longer Lycidas, the boy who scraped his knees and fell asleep to the rhythmic sound of his father's hammer. You're now merely the boy, a vessel to be filled with knowledge and shaped into a beautiful object. The sheer weight of this transformation feels heavy, like a cloak you can't quite get comfortable in. Your education begins immediately. It is not the simple memorization of the alphabet from your old tutor. It is a rigorous, all-encompassing curriculum designed to create not just a literate man, but a refined one. Your first teacher is an elderly slave from Miletus, a man with a stern face and an encyclopedic knowledge of Homer. He teaches you to recite the epics, not just as stories, but as musical works, teaching you the proper meter and intonation. You learn to speak in the rhythms of the gods and heroes, your young voice echoing through the grand, quiet halls. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that in ancient Greece, formal education often started with Homer, but the focus was less on literary analysis and more on memorization and performance, as if the epics were a kind of sacred text. The days are structured with a relentless precision. In the mornings, you practice your rhetoric, learning to argue a point with logic and grace. You're taught to speak with a clear voice, to stand straight, to gesture with purpose. Your tutor, a tall, gaunt man who had once been a student of Plato, drills you on the finer points of logical fallacies. You find yourself, a boy who once debated only the best way to catch a lizard, now debating the nature of virtue and justice, is a strange, disorienting experience. This is a mainstream historical fact. Greek education, especially for the elite, placed an enormous emphasis on rhetoric, as it was considered an essential skill for a citizen who would one day participate in the political life of the city. For you, a non-citizen in this particular role, it's a bizarre form of preparation for a life you'll never lead. In the afternoons, you are taught music. You learn to play the lyre. Your fingers, once clumsy and calloused from playing in the dirt, are now taught to pluck the strings with a delicate touch. The sounds you produce are hesitant at first, a series of discordant plinks and plunks, but slowly, under the patient instruction of a musician from Lesbos, you begin to produce a melody. The music fills the empty spaces in your heart, a beautiful, haunting sound that is both a comfort and a reminder of your loneliness. It is a way to express the emotions you're not allowed to voice. You're also taught to read and write on papyrus scrolls. The handwritten letters, so different from the rough scratchings on a wax tablet, feel impossibly fragile. You learn to recognize the elegant curves and lines of the Greek alphabet, and you spend hours copying verses of poetry and philosophy. You learn about the pre-Socratic thinkers, their wild theories about the world being made of water or fire. You learn about the gods and goddesses, their petty squabbles and grand passions. A mainstream historical fact is that literacy was not widespread in ancient Greece, and access to books was a luxury. As a boy in a wealthy household, you have access to a library that would be the envy of most of Athens. You are a privileged prisoner, educated in a way that would make you a prize for any discerning patron. Historians still argue whether these relationships were ever genuinely non-sexual, a purely educational or intellectual bond. Some scholars argue that the romantic and sexual elements were always present, while others posit that there was a spectrum of relationships, from purely platonic to deeply physical. You don't have the words for it, not yet, but you feel the undercurrent of it all, a silent tension in the air. Lysias watches you, his eyes a little too intent, his smile a little too soft. He doesn't touch you, not in a way that is inappropriate, not yet, but you feel his gaze on you as you practice your music, as you recite your lessons. It is a gaze of ownership, of anticipation. You're not allowed to speak unless spoken to, a rule that is never said aloud but is understood instinctively. You're to be seen and heard only in a way that is pleasing to your master. Your job is to be beautiful, and to be a reflection of his own refined taste. You are a living work of art, and like any work of art, you exist to be admired, not to have your own voice. The irony of learning rhetoric and philosophy while being denied the ability to express your own thoughts is not lost on you. It's a bizarre, slightly cruel joke, isn't it? Learning the tools of a free man while remaining a possession. Your only interaction with other boys is fleeting. You catch glimpses of the sons of Lysias's friends, boys who come to play in the courtyard. They are dressed in finer tunics. Their laughter is carefree and loud. They look at you with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if you are a pet, an exotic animal to be gawked at but not touched. You are a part of their world, but you're not of their world. A quirky, little-known tidbit about ancient Greek life is that freeborn boys and girls had a surprising amount of freedom to play and socialize, but the social strata were rigidly defined. You, a freeborn boy who is now a possession, exist in a sort of social purgatory. Your loneliness is a constant companion. At night you lie on your hard bed, staring up at the ceiling, and you think of the dusty floor of your old home, of the sound of your mother's loom. You feel an ache, a physical emptiness in the centre of your chest. You miss the simple, uncomplicated love of your family. You miss the freedom to be dirty, to be loud, to be a child. You're being groomed for a life of elegance and privilege, but you would trade it all in a heartbeat for a moment of genuine, unburdened freedom. You are a bird with a clipped wing, a fish in a beautiful but confining glass bowl, and you are a boy who is slowly, inexorably becoming a man. The journey from Lysiades to the boy is a journey of 1,000 tiny, quiet losses, each one leaving a small scar on your soul. The days blur into weeks, and the weeks into months. You're now accustomed to the rhythm of the household, a well-oiled machine that operates with silent precision. You no longer flinch at the sound of a raised voice from a slave, or the rustle of expensive robes as your master, Lysias, passes by. You've learned to be a ghost in your own life, moving through the halls with a practiced, silent grace. But every now and then, a memory, sharp and unbidden, will pierce your carefully constructed calm. The smell of burning olive oil, the distant laughter of children playing in the street, the sound of a certain kind of bird call, all of it reminds you of a life that is no longer yours. Your education continues with an almost obsessive intensity. You have moved on from simple memorization to a deeper understanding of the texts. You learn the poetry of Sappho, a controversial choice for a boy's education, but one that Lysias insists upon. Her verses on love and desire, on the beauty of both men and women, fill your mind with images of a passion you cannot yet understand. This is a quirky, little-known tidbit. While Sappho was celebrated in some circles, her work was also seen as subversive, and the decision to expose a young boy to her poems would have been a deliberate and telling choice. It's as if Lysias is preparing you for a life where love is a different kind of currency. You also spend long hours with a rhetoric tutor, a man who, you suspect, despises his job. He's a master of the art, but he treats you with a weary detachment, as if you are just another task on his to-do list. He teaches you how to construct a flawless argument, how to use metaphors and similes to great effect, and how to sway an audience with your words. He makes you stand in the centre of the room and deliver long speeches on imaginary topics, the merits of a new trade route, the best way to honour a fallen hero. You do it, but the words feel hollow. You are learning the tools of a free man, a citizen, but you're not allowed to use them to express your own wants, your own fears. You're a tool, and a tool does not need a voice. It just needs to be sharp. A mainstream historical fact is that this kind of education was a privilege, and rhetoric was considered the most important skill for a man who wanted to succeed in politics or the law. For you, it's a grim sort of irony. You're being educated to have a powerful voice in a world where you are, in every meaningful way, silent. You learn to speak, but you have nothing to say. The days are filled with the drone of lessons, the soft plucking of your lyre, and the silent, watchful presence of Lysias. He has a routine, and you have become a part of it. After his business in the agora is done, he often sits in his study, a large room lined with scrolls, and has you read to him. Your voice, once a simple instrument for calling to a stray dog, is now trained to read with emotion and inflection. You read to him from the histories of Herodotus, of the great battles between the Greeks and the Persians. You read from the plays of Sophocles, of the tragic fates of kings and queens, and you read from the philosophical dialogues of Plato, of the nature of love and beauty. Historians still argue whether Plato's philosophical discussions on love, particularly the concept of eros, were purely intellectual or were a veiled justification for the pederastic relationships of the time. You, a boy living in the shadow of that very debate, don't have the luxury of intellectual detachment. You feel the weight of those words, the subtext of that relationship, in the way Lysias's eyes follow you, in the way he asks you to sit on a low stool at his feet while you read. He never touches you, not yet, but his gaze is a kind of touch, a light, appraising pressure that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. He is preparing you, slowly and deliberately, for a different kind of role. He's not just your master, he's your patron, your teacher, and, in his own mind, your benefactor. You're his project, his living statue. And he is shaping you, not with a hammer and chisel, but with lessons and a quiet, persistent gaze. You're to be beautiful, yes, but not in a simple way. Your beauty is to be intellectual and graceful, a reflection of his own refined tastes. You're taught to pour wine at dinner parties, not with the clumsy motions of a servant, but with the fluid elegance of a dancer. You're taught to walk with your head held high, and to stand with your shoulders back. You're to be an object of beauty, but one with the veneer of a free, educated man. One afternoon, as you're practicing your lyre in the courtyard, a woman you've never seen before approaches you. She is older, with sharp eyes and a face etched with the lines of a hard life. She's a slave, a kitchen servant by the looks of her worn tunic. She stops and listens to your music for a long moment. When you finish, she says, in a voice that is rough from years of shouting orders, "You have a good hand, boy." It is a gift. You're so unused to a kind word that you almost drop your instrument. She gives you a small, conspiratorial smile, a look that seems to say, "I know what you are." It's a moment of connection, a brief glimpse of a world outside the gilded cage you inhabit. It's a reminder that not everyone in this house sees you as an object, and that somewhere, beneath the layers of training and education, there is still a boy, a human being, who can be seen and acknowledged. But the moment passes, and you're back to your lessons, back to the silent choreography of your new life. You are a male concubine in ancient Greece, but the life of a concubine is not all silks and pleasures. It is a life of careful performances, of constant vigilance, and of a loneliness that can feel as vast as the sea. You are taught to be a companion, a friend, a lover, but you're not asked what you want, what you feel. You're not a person with a story, you are a story to be told. The irony of it all is that the very education meant to elevate you, to make you a more desirable possession, also gives you the tools to understand your own captivity. You learn about freedom, about justice, about the dignity of man, and you realize that you possess none of these things. You are a contradiction, a paradox. You are a bird with a golden cage and you are learning to sing. But you're not singing because you're happy. You're singing because that is what is expected of you. And you wonder, in the quiet moments before sleep, if you will ever be able to stop singing, if you will ever be able to find your own voice, the one that was lost in the dust of your old neighbourhood. The day you first truly meet your master, Lysias, is not a grand occasion, but a quiet, almost domestic moment. You have been in his home for many months now, a fixture in the background, a silent presence. You have read to him, played music for him, and been an object for his tutors to sculpt and refine. But you have not had a true conversation. You are, in essence, a beautiful shadow. One evening, after your lessons are finished, you are called into his private study. The room is quiet, the only light coming from a single oil lamp on his writing desk. The air smells of papyrus and old ink. Lysias is not in his usual formal robes, but in a simple tunic. He motions for you to sit on a low stool across from him, and he looks at you, not as an object or a possession, but as a person. It is a terrifying and exhilarating feeling. He begins to speak, and his voice is softer than you have ever heard it. He talks about his own childhood, of a strict father and a love of philosophy. He talks about the beauty of the Greek language, about the power of a well-crafted argument, and the solace to be found in music. He asks you about the poems you've been reading, and for the first time, you are allowed to offer an opinion. You say that you find the tragedies of Sophocles more compelling than the histories of Herodotus, because they speak to the inner turmoil of a man, not just his public actions. He smiles, a slow, genuine smile that reaches his eyes. A thoughtful answer, he says, and you feel a warmth spread through you that has nothing to do with the lamplight. You see a different side of him, a side that is not just a wealthy patron or a demanding master, but a man who genuinely appreciates the things you are being taught. He is a collector of beautiful things, and you are his most prized acquisition. This is a crucial distinction. He doesn't just want you to be a servant. He wants you to be a reflection of his own intellect and taste. This is a mainstream historical fact, that wealthy Greek men often took great pride in the education and refinement of their male companions, seeing them as a testament to their own character and status. You are a living trophy, a walking testament to his good taste. Historians still argue whether this kind of behaviour was a genuine form of affection, or a more complex display of social power. Was Lysias truly fond of you, or was he just proud of the beautiful object he had created? You don't have the words for this scholarly debate, but you feel the ambiguity of it in your gut. His kindness feels both genuine and conditional. It is given to you because you are beautiful and smart and obedient. What happens if you stop being any of those things? The thought is a cold knife in your stomach. He tells you about the symposia he attends, the intellectual gatherings where men drink wine, recite poetry, and debate philosophy. He tells you that he intends to bring you with him when you're a little older, to show you off, in a sense. The thought fills you with a mix of dread and a strange morbid curiosity. You have heard the stories of the symposia, of the drinking and the revelry, and you know that in such a place, a boy like you is not just a pupil, but a part of the entertainment. One night, you're woken by a sound outside your room. It is the sound of a woman crying softly. You open your door a crack and see a young female slave, a girl who works in the kitchen, sitting on the floor, her face buried in her hands. You don't know her name. You're a part of the household, but you're also separate from it. You have been placed on a pedestal, and pedestals are isolating places. You close your door, your heart aching with a shared silent misery. A quirky little-known tidbit is that while ancient Greek society had a profound contempt for manual labour and slaves, the daily life of a household was a complex web of relationships, sometimes with genuine moments of kindness and shared humanity, even among those with vast differences in social status. You, however, are not quite a slave, and not quite a free person. You're an anomaly, and anomalies are always lonely. Lysias gives you a new tunic, one made of fine linen dyed with a rich purple that would have been incredibly expensive. He tells you that it is to mark your new status, that you're no longer a simple boy from the streets. You're a part of his household in a more meaningful way. The tunic feels impossibly soft against your skin, and you catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished bronze mirror. You don't recognize the boy in the reflection. Your hair, once a shaggy mess, is now neatly trimmed. Your face is thinner. Your eyes are older. You're no longer Lycidas. You're about to become a person with a different name, a different life. A name that will be given to you by a man who owns you. A name that marks the transition from one life to the next. The name Lycidas, son of a wolf, is a name of freedom and wildness. The new name, you suspect, will be a name of domesticity, of being tamed. As you stand there, looking at your own reflection, a feeling of dread settles in your stomach. You are a beautiful boy, a work of art, and you are valued for your beauty. But you know with a certainty that chills you to the bone that the beauty of an object is not its own. It belongs to its owner. You're becoming a man with a mind and a soul, but you're also becoming a possession. The life of a male concubine in ancient Greece is a life of profound contradiction. You're being educated, but you're not free. You are valued, but you are not a person in your own right. You are loved in a sense, but it is a love that comes with a price, a love that is bound by chains you cannot see. The life you left behind with its dust and its simple joys now seems like a mythical paradise. You would trade all the rhetoric and all the poetry for one more game of chase in the unpaved streets of your old neighbourhood. You would trade all the fine linen and expensive perfumes for the rough feel of your father's hands on your shoulder. But there is no going back. The gates of the past have closed behind you, and you are walking inexorably toward a future that is not your own, a future that is being built for you by a man who sees you as a reflection of his own status and taste. The tragic life of a male concubine is not just about the loss of one's freedom, but the loss of one's self. You're becoming a person you do not recognize, a person who is defined not by his own choices, but by the choices of another. The day comes when Lysias gives you a new name. It's a quiet morning. The house still sleepy and the sun just beginning to warm the courtyard. He calls you to his study, and you go, a knot of anticipation and dread in your stomach. You know, with the chilling certainty of a boy who has lost everything, that this is the final irrevocable step in your transformation. You're no longer Lycidas. You're about to be given a name that marks your new purpose. He doesn't stand on ceremony. He simply looks at you and says, "From this day forward, your name is Eryx." The name, he explains, is from a mountain in Sicily, a place of great beauty and ancient myth. It is a name that is not common in Athens, a name that will set you apart. It sounds beautiful, melodic, but to you it feels like a brand, a mark of ownership. Lycidas, son of a wolf, was a name of wildness and freedom. Eryx is the name of a mountain, a beautiful and immovable thing, a thing that belongs to the earth it stands on. You're no longer a free-roaming creature, you're a landscape, a possession to be admired from afar. This is a mainstream historical fact. A change of name, especially for a slave or a concubine, was a common practice in the ancient world, a way to sever ties with the past and signify a new life and a new identity under a new master. You try the name out in your mind. Eryx. It sounds like a whisper in the wind, a sound that is not your own. You nod. because you know that is what is expected of you. You're to be grateful for this new identity, for this opportunity. But gratitude is the last thing you feel. You feel a hollow space where your old self used to be. You feel the finality of the decision, the last grain of sand falling from the hourglass of your childhood. Your life continues on, but with a renewed sense of purpose. Lysias begins to introduce you to his close friends, men of wealth and influence, who come to his home to discuss politics, philosophy and art. And you're not a part of the conversation, but a part of the decor, a living sculpture to be admired. You serve the wine with a grace that has been drilled into you. You recite poetry with a voice that is now as smooth as polished marble. You play the lyre, and the men listen, their eyes on you, not on the instrument. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that the education of a male concubine often included specific social graces, like the ability to pour wine without spilling a drop, or to engage in polite conversation without being too forward. It was a careful balance between being a companion and a servant. You are a walking performance, an embodiment of your master's good taste, and you are always, always on. Historians still argue whether the men who partook in these relationships truly saw their young companions as equal partners in the intellectual and artistic pursuits they shared. Was it a genuine exchange of ideas, or was it just a veneer of intellectualism over a relationship of power and possession? You don't have the words for this debate, but you feel the hypocrisy of it in the pit of your stomach. They praise your intellect, but they treat you like a prized horse or a beautiful vase. You're a beautiful object, and an object cannot have a mind of its own. Your days fall into a quiet, monotonous rhythm. Lessons in the morning, music in the afternoon, an evening spent as a beautiful, silent presence in your master's home. You're never left alone. You're always under the watchful eye of a tutor, a servant, or Lysias himself. The confinement is not physical, in the sense of a locked room, but it is a mental and emotional cage, one that is far more difficult to escape. You're taught to love philosophy and poetry, but you're not allowed to use them to question your own reality. You're taught about freedom and democracy, but you're not allowed to have either. You begin to find solace in the small forgotten corners of the house, a small hidden garden where a single olive tree grows, the stone bench under a trellis of grapevines. These are the places where you can be alone with your thoughts, where you can, for a fleeting moment, be Lycidas again, the boy who dreamed of being free. You close your eyes, and you can almost feel the sun on your face, the dust of the streets on your skin. But the memory is fading, growing more distant, like a dream you had a long time ago. You begin to notice the subtle changes in your master's behaviour. He touches your arm as he passes by. He lingers a little longer in your room after your lessons are done. He gives you gifts, not of books or instruments, but of small personal items. A beautiful ring with a carved serpent, a leather strap for your lyre, a silver comb for your hair. They are gifts that are meant to be a kind of intimacy, a way to show his growing affection for you. And with each gift, the weight of your new name, Eryx, feels a little heavier. It is the name of a possession, and these are the marks of a beautiful thing being owned. This is a mainstream historical fact. The exchange of gifts was a common way to solidify a pederastic relationship in ancient Greece, a way to move from the purely educational to the more intimate. The gifts were not just tokens of affection, but a physical manifestation of a man's pride in his young companion. One evening, as you're pouring wine for Lysias, he reaches out and touches your cheek, his thumb brushing away a stray lock of hair. "You're growing into a beautiful young man, Eryx," he says, his voice a low rumble. "You're more than I ever could have hoped for." You don't say anything. You just stand there, your heart pounding in your chest, the words ringing hollow in your ears. He is not talking about you, the person. He is talking about you, the project, the masterpiece. And you realise, with a chilling sense of clarity, that he will never see the difference. The tragic life of a male concubine is not always a life of overt cruelty. Sometimes it is a life of quiet luxury, of beautiful words and expensive things, but it is also a life of 1,000 small losses, of a soul slowly being chipped away, of an identity that is not your own. You are Eryx, the boy from a distant mountain, but in the lonely nights, in the small corners of the house, you are still Lycidas, the son of a wolf, a boy who is trying to find his way back to himself, and you wonder if you will ever succeed. Your life has settled into a pattern of learned leisure and profound loneliness. The days are a quiet, seamless tapestry of lessons and recitations. You are no longer Lycidas, the boy who yearned for freedom. You are Eryx, the beautiful and educated young man, and you have learned to suppress the wildness in your heart. You are a work of art, and a work of art does not have a will of its own. Your routine is as rigid as the columns of the Parthenon. Mornings are for rhetoric and philosophy. You sit at the feet of a gruff-voiced tutor, a man who, you suspect, despises his job but loves the paycheck. He teaches you about the pre-Socratic thinkers, about how Thales believed all things came from water, and how Anaximenes believed it was air. You find yourself drawn to the more esoteric ideas, the ones that suggest there is a hidden order to the world, a logic beneath the chaos. It's a way of making sense of your own life, of finding a pattern in the seemingly random turns of fate. A quirky little-known tidbit is that many of these early philosophers' ideas, while a bit wild to us now, were a radical departure from the old mythological explanations of the world. They were, in their own way, a search for freedom from the arbitrary whims of the gods. You can relate to that. Afternoons are for music and poetry. You practice the lyre until your fingers are calloused, and you recite the epics of Homer until the verses run together in your mind. You find solace in the rhythm of the lines, in the grandeur of the ancient stories. It is in these moments, with the music filling the air, that you feel a brief, fleeting sense of connection, not to the world around you, but to something ancient and powerful and enduring. This is a mainstream historical fact. A good education for a young man in ancient Greece often included a strong emphasis on music and poetry, as these were seen as essential components of a well-rounded and cultured character. For you, it's more than just an education. It's a form of therapy, a way to channel your unexpressed emotions into something beautiful. You're learning to sing your sorrow. Historians still argue whether the kind of intense one-on-one mentorship you're receiving was a widespread practice or was reserved for the sons of the elite. Was this a unique and privileged position, or was it a more common reality for a certain class of freeborn boys? You, a boy living in the shadow of this very question, feel the weight of its ambiguity every day. You're both a privilege and a burden, a sign of your master's status and a reminder of your own lost freedom. Your loneliness is a quiet, constant companion. You're surrounded by people, but you are utterly alone. The other slaves in the household regard you with a mix of pity and envy. Pity because they know what you are, and envy because they see the fine clothes, the expensive education, the food you eat. They don't understand that you would trade it all in a heartbeat for a moment of genuine, unburdened freedom. You're a bird with golden feathers, but your cage is just as real. Lycius continues to shower you with small, thoughtful gifts. A beautiful bronze mirror, a finely wrought stylus for writing on wax tablets, a small, intricate carving of a dolphin. Your hands in the old life were stained from working in the fields, but now they are soft and unblemished, a testament to your new, gentler life. He touches your arm, your shoulder, your cheek, with a light, possessive touch, as if you are a sculpture that he has a right to admire and feel. The intimacy is not yet physical, but it is deeply unsettling. It is a slow, methodical chipping away at your sense of self, a constant reminder that you are not your own. You find yourself observing the other members of the household, trying to understand their lives, their routines. You watch the kitchen slaves as they gossip and laugh, and you realize that they, for all their servitude, have a kind of camaraderie you can never have. They have a shared life, a shared experience. You are an anomaly, a one-of-a-kind creation, and that is the loneliest state of all. You find a small, secret joy in the mundane, the feel of the cool, polished marble under your feet, the sound of the fountain in the courtyard, the way the light from the oil lamps dances on the walls at night. These small, sensory details are your only real connections to the world, your only way of grounding yourself in a life that feels more and more like a dream. It's a bizarre sort of existence, isn't it? Finding solace in the little things while the big picture of your life is a constant gnawing emptiness. One evening, you are sitting in the courtyard, reciting a passage from the Iliad, when Lycius comes and sits beside you. He doesn't say anything at first, just listens to your voice. When you finish, he says, "The stories are beautiful, aren't they? But the reality is far more complex. The heroes are not always heroic. The gods are not always just." He looks at you with a piercing, knowing gaze, and for the first time you feel as if he truly sees you, not as an object, but as a person who understands the tragedy and the irony of the human condition. And for a fleeting moment, you feel a connection to him, a shared understanding of a world that is both beautiful and brutal. But the moment passes, and he is gone, and you are left alone with your thoughts, your poetry, and your profound, unshakable loneliness. The life of a male concubine is not always a life of overt suffering. Sometimes it is a life of quiet elegance, a life of being groomed and educated and admired. But it is always, always a life of quiet despair, of a soul slowly being suffocated by the very beauty it is meant to possess. You are Eryx, a man of learning and grace, but in the quiet of the night, you're still Lycidas, a boy who just wants to go home. And you know, with a chilling certainty, that you never will. The day of your first symposium is a blur of nervous anticipation. You're no longer just a pupil in a quiet house. You're about to be introduced to the world of Athenian society, or at least the world of its male elite. You're dressed in a new chiton, a soft white linen that hangs elegantly on your frame. Your hair is oiled and styled, and your skin is scented with myrrh. You feel less like a person and more like a showpiece, a rare vase being taken out of storage for a special occasion. A mainstream historical fact is that the symposium was not just a drinking party, but a fundamental part of elite Greek social life. It was a formal gathering of men where they would recline on couches, drink wine, eat, and engage in a wide range of activities, from philosophical debates and poetry recitations to singing and games. For a wealthy man like Lysias, attending and hosting symposia was a way of showcasing his status, his intellect, and his social connections. And you, Eryx, are a reflection of all three. You and Lysias arrive at the home of his friend, a man named Cleon, a successful merchant with a reputation for both his wealth and his wit. The house is even grander than your own, with a courtyard, a small marble statue of Hermes at the centre. The sound of male laughter and the low thrum of a lyre drift out from the andron, the men's quarters. You feel a tremor of fear in your stomach. This is the big stage. This is where you will be judged, not just by Lysias, but by his peers. You enter the room and are immediately met with a wall of sound and a swirl of smells, the sweet scent of wine, the pungent aroma of roasted meat, and the earthy, smoky smell of oil lamps. The room is filled with men, some elderly and dignified, others young and boisterous. They are all reclined on couches, leaning on their left elbows, their bodies arranged in a lazy convivial tableau. They talk and gesture with their hands, and the room is filled with a lively, boisterous energy. Lysias takes his place on a couch and motions for you to sit on a small stool at his feet, as is customary. You're in a strange, liminal space. You're not a guest, but you're not quite a servant either. Your role is to be a part of the atmosphere, to be an object of beauty and intellect that a man can be proud to have in his home. You are meant to be a quiet companion, to fill a cup with wine when asked, to recite a poem if prompted, but to otherwise be silent and present. You listen to the conversations around you, and they are everything you have been educated to understand. They talk about politics in the agora, about the latest philosophical debates in the academies, about the campaigns of the Athenian generals. They are all fluent in the language of power and intellect, and you, for the first time, feel a part of that world. The irony is not lost on you. You, a boy from the dust, are now a part of a world that would have been entirely inaccessible to your father. This is the gilded cage at its most beautiful. A quirky little-known tidbit about the symposium is that the men often mixed their wine with water, sometimes in varying ratios, and a host's reputation could be judged on the quality of his wine and the strength of the mixture. Too strong, and the guests would be in a drunken stupor. Too weak, and they would be bored. It was a delicate balance, much like your own position in the room. You have to be interesting enough to be a topic of conversation, but not so interesting that you steal the show. As the evening progresses, the wine flows freely, and the conversations grow louder and more spirited. The men begin to sing, their voices surprisingly melodic and a little off-key. They challenge each other to intellectual games, to debates on impossible topics. Cleon, your host, stands and proposes a toast to Lysias, praising his intellect and his good taste. He gestures toward you with a nod, and the men turn their heads, their eyes appraising. You feel a flush of heat on your cheeks. You're a topic of conversation, a living testament to your master's success. Historians still argue whether the Eromenos, the younger male companion, was seen as a passive object of desire or an active participant in the social and intellectual life of the symposium. Was your presence a sign of Lysias's refined taste, or was it a declaration of his power over you? You feel the ambiguity of that question in the silence that follows Cleon's toast, in the way the men's eyes linger on your face. Lysias, with a proud smile, reaches out and places a hand on your knee, a gesture of quiet, possessive ownership. He says, in a voice loud enough for the men to hear, he is a good boy. He reads Homer with a true understanding of the soul of the hero, and he plays the lyre with a grace that could charm a serpent. The men nod in agreement, and you feel as if you are being appraised at a horse market. The praise is genuine, but it is also a reminder of your place. You are a thing, a beautiful thing, but a thing nonetheless. The night wears on, and you are eventually asked to recite a poem. You stand, your heart pounding, and you recite a passage from the Iliad, the part where Achilles mourns the death of Patroclus. Your voice, which has been trained to be clear and emotional, fills the room. You put all of your loneliness, all of your unspoken grief into the words, and for a fleeting moment, you are not Eric's, the beautiful possession. You're a voice in the wilderness, and you're being heard. When you finish, the room is quiet for a moment, and then the men burst into applause. You sit down, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over you. You have performed your part, and you have performed it well. You have proven yourself worthy of your master's affection, and a worthy reflection of his status. But as you sit there, surrounded by the laughter and the noise, you feel more alone than ever. You are a part of this world, but you are not of it. You are a ghost, a beautiful, sad ghost, haunting a world that is not your own. And in the quiet of the night, as you're led back to Lysias's home, you realize that your purpose is to be beautiful, to be smart, and to be silent. And you wonder if you will ever be able to be anything else. The morning after the symposium, you feel a peculiar sense of emptiness. The room where you recited poetry and poured wine is just a memory. The laughter and philosophical debates have faded, and you're back in the quiet, familiar confines of Lysias's home. You are not a guest, and the world of the symposium is not your world. You're simply a beautiful object that was taken out for display and has now been put back on the shelf. This is the reality of your existence, a life lived on the fringes of power and privilege, always a spectator and never a true participant. A mainstream historical fact is that while the symposium was a central part of Greek male social life, women and non-citizens were generally excluded from them. You, as a young man in your particular position, occupied a unique and ambiguous space. You were in the room, but you were not at the table. You were educated to understand the conversation, but your role was not to lead it. You were to be seen and admired, not to be a voice in your own right. This is a subtle but profound difference, and it is the shadow that hangs over your every moment. Your master, Lysias, seems particularly pleased with you. He compliments your performance from the night before, praising your voice and your poise. He says that his friends were impressed, that you're a testament to his good taste. He gives you a new stylus, one made of ivory, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. It is a gift of silent praise, a tangible object that says, "You did well. You are a worthy possession." You accept it with a polite nod, your heart a hollow chamber in your chest. The irony of being given a tool for writing and thinking, while being denied the freedom to truly be a thinker, is not lost on you. The days continue their slow, relentless march. You're once again buried in your lessons, in the quiet, repetitive work of becoming more and more beautiful, more and more refined. You spend hours in the library, your fingers tracing the words on the papyrus scrolls, your mind absorbing the wisdom of the ages. You learn about the concept of arete, the Greek ideal of excellence or virtue, and you wonder what your own arete is. Is it to be a perfect possession? To be a flawless reflection of your master's desires? The thought is a cold, bitter taste in your mouth. You begin to notice the unspoken rules of the household, the subtle social hierarchy that governs everyone's life, from the lowliest slave to the master himself. The kitchen slaves have a certain way of speaking to the household servants, who have a certain way of speaking to the trusted freedmen, like Xenophon. And you are a category unto yourself. You're not a slave, not in the traditional sense, but you are not free either. You exist in a sort of social no man's land, a place where you are both envied and pitied, admired and dismissed. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that the social dynamics in a wealthy Greek household were incredibly complex. The slaves were not a monolithic group. They had their own hierarchies, their own alliances, and their own rivalries. You, with your fine clothes and your privileged position, are a source of both curiosity and resentment. You are a reminder of what they are not, and you are a testament to the strange and arbitrary whims of fate. Historians still argue whether the concept of pederasty in ancient Greece was a form of social control, a way for the elite to maintain power and to educate the next generation of leaders. Was it a way of instilling the values of the ruling class into a select group of young men, and if so, what was your role in that? Were you a tool for the perpetuation of the very system that has taken your freedom? You feel the weight of this question in your daily life, in the way you are taught to value honour and virtue, but are denied the opportunity to live a truly honourable or virtuous life, a life where you have the freedom to make your own choices. The loneliness of your position is a physical ache in your chest. You have no one to talk to, no one to confide in. The other slaves are friendly but distant, and you know, instinctively, that you can't trust them with your true feelings. They are trying to survive in a harsh world, and you, with your gilded cage, are a symbol of their hardship. You are an anomaly, a beautiful, sad ghost haunting a world that is not your own. You spend your afternoons in the garden, a small walled-off space where the only sound is the rustle of leaves and the buzzing of bees. You find a small, forgotten corner, a place where the vines are thick and the light is dappled. You sit there, and for a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to be listed as again. You remember the sound of your mother's loom, the smell of your father's leather. You remember the feel of the sun on your skin, the dust of the streets between your toes. But the memories are fading, growing more and more distant, like the words on a scroll that are slowly becoming illegible. One day, as you're sitting in the garden, you hear a new sound. It is a boy's voice, not the sound of a slave, but a different kind of voice. A voice that is both confident and a little bit nervous. You hear Lysias's voice too, and you hear the shuffling of feet. You stay hidden behind the vines, your heart pounding in your chest. You are no longer the only one. There is a new boy in the house, and you know, with a chilling certainty, that your time as the sole object of your master's affection is coming to an end. The tragic life of a male concubine is not just a life of quiet luxury and profound loneliness. It is a life of constant uncertainty, a life where you can be replaced at a moment's notice. And you wonder, in the quiet of the garden, what your life will become when you're no longer the most beautiful thing in the house. The newcomer arrives on a humid afternoon, a boy with sun-streaked hair and eyes that still hold the wildness of the outside world. His name is Damon, and he is a few years younger than you, a boy on the cusp of his own transformation. You watch from the shadows of the courtyard as Lysias greets him, his voice a little softer, his smile a little brighter. And you feel it, the cold, sharp pang of a rivalry that has not yet begun, but is already a foregone conclusion. You are the past, he is the future. This is a mainstream historical fact. In the world of pederastic relationships in ancient Greece, the Eromenos was typically an adolescent, and the relationship often came to an end as the boy reached manhood. Your time as Lysias's favoured companion is not infinite. You're already beginning to grow out of the role, and Damon is here to take your place. You're being replaced not because you have done anything wrong, but simply because of the relentless march of time. You are becoming a man, and a man cannot be a boy. The irony of being educated for a role that you are simultaneously aging out of is a bitter pill to swallow. Your new life, which was once a world of quiet, solitary elegance, is now a world of subtle competition. You find yourself observing Damon, measuring him against yourself. He's not as skilled at the lyre as you are, his fingers are clumsy, and he fumbles the notes. His voice, when he recites Homer, is thin and unsure. He's not yet the beautiful, polished object you are. But he has something you no longer possess, the freshness of a new beginning, the unblemished innocence of a boy who has not yet been broken. Lysias looks at him with a gaze that is both a reflection of his own power and a quiet, yearning tenderness. It is the same gaze that he once reserved for you, and its absence now is a physical ache in your chest. A quirky, little-known tidbit about the ancient Greek world is that the concept of beauty was not just a matter of physical appearance, but was deeply intertwined with social status, intellect, and grace. A beautiful boy was not just a pretty face. He was a potential partner in the cultivation of virtue and intellect. Damon, in his unrefined state, is a blank slate, a new project for Lysias to mould. You, with your years of education, are a finished piece, a masterpiece that is now being put out to pasture. Historians still argue whether the transition from one Eromenos to the next was a peaceful and accepted part of social life, or whether it was a source of jealousy and rivalry. Was it a graceful handover of a role, or was it a quiet, brutal competition for a master's favour? You feel the reality of this debate every day, in the way Damon gives you a wide berth, in the way he looks at you with a mix of awe and fear. He knows instinctively what you are and what he is destined to become. The two of you are given lessons together now, and the dynamic is a strange and unsettling one. You are the elder statesman, the one who has mastered the curriculum. You answer the questions from the tutors with an effortless grace, your voice clear and confident. Damon stumbles over his words, his face flushing with embarrassment. And you see it in the tutor's eyes, a look that says, "Why are we wasting our time with this boy when we have a masterpiece right here?" But you also see it in Lysias's eyes, a look that says, "He will be a masterpiece too, in time." You begin to notice the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the household. Lysias asks Damon to sit with him in the evenings, to read to him from the scrolls. The lyre, once a source of solace for you, is now a source of agony, as you hear Damon's clumsy plucking from a distant room. You are no longer the one he seeks out for quiet companionship. You are no longer the centre of his world. You are becoming a beautiful but secondary presence. The loneliness you once felt is now compounded by a new, more bitter feeling, the loneliness of being replaced. You're still in your gilded cage, but the gold feels a little tarnished now, a little less bright. You're still a possession, but you're no longer the most prized one. And in the quiet of the night, you feel a new kind of fear, a fear of what comes next. What happens to a masterpiece that is no longer admired? What happens to a beautiful thing that is no longer the most beautiful thing in the house? The thought is a cold, sharp knife in your heart. The relationship with Damon is a fragile one. There is no open hostility, no shouting or fighting. It is all a dance of quiet glances and unspoken tensions. He looks at you as a potential future, a glimpse of the man he might become. You look at him as a ghost of your own past, a reminder of the boy you used to be. You are a mirror for each other, and the reflection is both beautiful and terrifying. You begin to find a strange, morbid pleasure in the quiet moments when Damon struggles. When he mispronounces a word, when he hits a wrong note on the lyre, you feel a small, ugly sense of satisfaction. It is not something you are proud of, but it is a way of holding on to your own fading relevance, a way of proving that you still have a place in this strange, cruel world. But one day, as you are practicing your lyre in the courtyard, Damon approaches you. He doesn't say anything, just stands there for a moment, his hands fidgeting. Then he says, in a voice so soft you can barely hear it, "Could you show me how you do that? How you make the music so sad?" You look at him, and you see not a rival, but a reflection of your own past. He's a boy who is just beginning to understand the unspoken sorrow of his new life, and for the first time you feel a connection to him, a shared sense of a fate that you both must endure. The tragic life of a male concubine is not just a life of quiet luxury and profound loneliness. It is a life of shared silence, of a shared understanding of a world that is beautiful but not kind. And you wonder, in the quiet of the courtyard, if you and Damon, the boy who is becoming what you once were, can find a way to be friends in this strange and unsettling world. Your friendship with Damon blossoms in the quiet corners of the household, a fragile and unexpected solace in a world of profound loneliness. You're not just two boys in a gilded cage, you're two mirrors, reflecting back the shared experience of a life that was chosen for you. A mainstream historical fact is that bonds of friendship between slaves or servants in a single household were a common and often essential part of survival in the ancient world. You are not slaves in the traditional sense, but your shared predicament creates a powerful unspoken connection. You begin to find moments to steal away from your lessons and tutors. You meet in the small walled garden, a place of peace and quiet reflection. Damon is still new to this world, his mind still filled with the sun-drenched images of his old life. He talks to you about chasing goats in the hills, of the taste of fresh goat's milk, and of the unpaved streets of his hometown. His stories are a painful reminder of what you have lost, but they are also a comfort, a lifeline to a past that is slowly fading from your memory. You, in turn, teach him what you have learned. You show him how to hold the lyre so the music flows from your fingers, not from your effort. You teach him the intricate rhythms of Greek meter and the secret meanings hidden in the philosophical debates you overhear. A quirky little-known tidbit is that in ancient Greece, a boy's education often included lessons on how to read the body language of others, to know who to trust and who to avoid. You and Damon have learned this skill instinctively, a way of navigating a world where trust is a rare and precious commodity. You read the small, almost imperceptible shifts in Lysias's moods, and you warn each other when he is in a bad temper. You have become a team, a quiet, unspoken conspiracy against the world that holds you captive. Historians still argue whether the concept of a platonic friendship between male companions in a pederastic relationship was a possibility, or just a romanticised ideal. Was there room for genuine affection and camaraderie between boys in your position, or was every relationship, every interaction, coloured by the power dynamics of the household? You and Damon, with your shared secret life, are a living testament to the possibility of a different kind of bond. A friendship born not of shared power, but of shared powerlessness. The intellectual life of the household continues to revolve around you. You're still the master's star pupil, but now you have a partner in your education. You and Damon spend hours in the library, your heads bent over a papyrus scroll, your voices a low hum in the quiet of the room. You find a particular solace in the works of the philosophers, the thinkers who ask the big questions about life and death, about virtue and justice. The debates that took place in the Agora and the academies of Athens were not just intellectual exercises, they were a search for meaning in a world that was often cruel and unjust. You and Damon, with your own quiet, unstated injustices, find a morbid sort of comfort in their words. One of the more powerful moments of your shared life comes one afternoon when you and Damon are in the study, and Lysias's friends are holding a philosophical debate in the next room. They're arguing about the nature of love, about whether it is a physical or a spiritual passion. The men speak with an academic detachment, using the elegant abstract language of the academy. But you and Damon, as you listen from the doorway, feel the weight of their words in a very different way. You feel the reality of their debate in your own bodies, in the quiet, possessive way that Lysias touches you, in the hopeful, terrified look in Damon's eyes. As a light-hearted aside, it's funny how they debated the most complex and intimate human emotions with the same intellectual rigour they'd use to discuss the best way to drain a swamp. A little bit of a disconnect there, don't you think? But for you, it's a grimly amusing show. The men in the other room are quoting Plato, talking about the ladder of love, the idea that a man should move from a love of physical beauty to a love of spiritual beauty, and finally to a love of the divine. You and Damon look at each other, and a single unspoken question passes between you. Where do we fit into that equation? Are you just the first rung on their ladder, a beautiful object to be discarded when a higher form of love is found? The thought is a cold, bitter one, and you realise that the most beautiful words in the world, in the mouths of the wrong people, can be the most empty. As the months go by, your friendship with Damon deepens. You're no longer just allies in a shared plight. You're friends. You share small jokes, you laugh at the quirks of the tutors, and you offer each other a quiet, steady support that has become a necessity for your survival. You're no longer just an object to be admired. You're a person with a friend, and a friend is a kind of freedom, a small but powerful act of defiance against a world that wants you to be alone. You're still a boy in a gilded cage, but now you have a fellow bird to share it with, and you wonder, in the quiet of the night, if this friendship is enough to save you, to give you the strength to face the future, whatever it may be. One afternoon, a wave of profound restlessness washes over you. Your education is a gilded cage, and your friendship with Damon, while a powerful comfort, is a small patch of green in an otherwise barren desert. You crave the outside world, a glimpse of the city that is your home but is no longer yours. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that in ancient Greece, wealthy households were often self-contained worlds, with a master's business, slaves, and family rarely venturing outside the walls unless for a specific social or political purpose. For a boy in your position, leaving the estate was a rare privilege. You approach Lysias with a quiet, carefully worded request. You explain that you wish to visit the Agora, not to linger, but simply to observe the daily life of the city. To your surprise, he grants your request. Perhaps he sees it as a test, a way of proving your loyalty, or perhaps he feels a momentary pang of empathy for your quiet confinement. He allows you to go, but you're not to go alone. You're to be accompanied by Xenophon, the kind, grey-haired freedman who's been a quiet presence in your life since you first arrived. The journey from the grand, quiet estate to the bustling centre of Athens feels like travelling from one world to another. The air, once scented with jasmine and incense, is now thick with the dust of the streets and the smells of the marketplace. The sounds, once the quiet hum of the household, are now a cacophony of voices. The shouting of vendors, the haggling of merchants, the lowing of cattle, and the laughter of children. You feel a thrill of fear and excitement. This is the city of your childhood, but it feels foreign and strange. As you walk, you notice the details. The houses, so different from the polished marble of Lysias's home, are made of rough-hewn stone and dried mud, their windows shuttered against the heat. The people, so different from the refined guests at the symposia, are dressed in simple workaday chitons, their faces etched with the lines of a hard life. You see a boy about your age, his face smudged with dirt, his tunic torn at the elbow, and a sharp, aching pang of recognition pierces your heart. You could have been that boy. You were that boy. Xenophon walks beside you, his presence a quiet, steady anchor in the chaotic sea of the Agora. He points out the different stalls, the merchants from far-off lands, the groups of men debating in the open square. He is not a tour guide, but a silent companion, and you feel a profound sense of gratitude for his quiet, watchful presence. He knows what you have lost, and he allows you to feel it without judgment. A mainstream historical fact is that the Agora was the heart of Athenian life, serving as the city's marketplace, political centre, and social hub. It was where men conducted business, debated philosophy, and participated in the democratic process. For a freeborn boy like you, it would have been the centre of your universe. Now, you're a ghost walking through it, a spectator in your own life. You're a living testament to the fact that even in a democracy, not all men are truly free. As you walk through the marketplace, you overhear a group of men discussing a new law that is being proposed, a law that would give more rights to the children of foreigners who have lived in Athens for a long time. They argue with passion and conviction, their voices rising and falling with the emotion of the debate. You listen, and you feel a sense of longing so intense that it takes your breath away. You have been educated in rhetoric and philosophy, in the art of argument, and yet you are standing on the sidelines, a silent observer in a world where you have no voice, no vote, no say. This is the cruelest irony of all. Historians still argue whether the concept of Greek democracy was a truly inclusive one, or if it was just a system designed to benefit a very small, very elite group of male citizens. You, as a boy who is both a citizen by birth and a non-citizen by circumstance, are living proof of the latter. You are in the heart of the most celebrated democracy in the ancient world, and you are, in every meaningful way, a subject, not a citizen. As you turn to walk back to the estate, you catch a glimpse of a small hidden courtyard. In it, a group of boys, a few years younger than you, are wrestling and laughing, their faces flushed with effort and joy. They are dirty and dishevelled, their clothes torn, but their laughter is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. It is the sound of pure, unburdened freedom. You stand there, a beautiful, polished object, and you watch them, your heart aching with a profound, unshakable longing. You are Eric's, the beautiful and educated young man, but in that moment you would trade all the gold in the world for a single, unburdened moment of being Lycidas again, the boy who was free. The journey back is quiet. You're lost in your thoughts, the bustling energy of the Agora a distant memory. The air in the estate feels still and dead now, the marble halls a little colder, the sound of the fountain a little more monotonous. You have had a taste of the outside world, a fleeting moment of freedom, and it has only made the bars of your cage feel more real, a little tighter, a little more confining. You're a bird that has been allowed to see the sky, and now you know, with a chilling certainty, that you will never truly fly. The brief excursion to the Agora leaves you with a profound sense of melancholy, but also a renewed longing for something more. You have seen the outside world and you know, with a cold clarity, that you're not a part of it. But in the grand, quiet isolation of the estate, you and Damon begin to find small ways of creating your own world. You're not a part of the city, but you can perhaps find a way to be a part of something else. One day, as you're reading from a scroll on the gods and goddesses of the Greek pantheon, a thought occurs to you. A pilgrimage, not a grand, formal one, but a small, secret journey to a nearby temple, a place of peace and spiritual solace. A mainstream historical fact is that in ancient Greece, it was common for people to visit temples and sanctuaries to seek wisdom, give thanks, or offer prayers. For you and Damon, it would be a pilgrimage of a different kind, a search for a connection to something that is not your master, not your education, not the life that has been chosen for you. You propose the idea to Damon, and his eyes light up with a boyish excitement you haven't seen in a long time. He agrees, and you begin to plan your secret journey. You're not supposed to leave the estate without permission, but you and Damon have learned to be ghosts in your own home. You know the comings and goings of the other slaves, the daily routines of the tutors, and the hours when Lysias is preoccupied with his business. You choose a day when the moon will be a thin sliver in the sky, and you make your plans. The night of your escape is a humid one, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and the distant sounds of the city. You and Damon sneak out a small, unguarded side gate. Your heart's pounding in your chests. You're not running away, not in the traditional sense. You're just running to something, a brief, fleeting moment of freedom. You walk through the quiet, unpaved back streets of Athens, the moon your only guide. The city, which was so loud and bustling during the day, is now a sleeping giant, its secrets whispered in the shadows. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that while Athens was a city of grand monuments and public spaces, the vast majority of its inhabitants lived in small, narrow and often cramped quarters. The streets you're walking through are a testament to that fact. They are not the wide open avenues of the agora, but a maze of tight winding alleyways, a world that is hidden from the eyes of the elite. You and Damon, with your fine clothes and your quiet, graceful walk, are like two beautiful lost children in a world that is not your own. The temple you seek is not one of the grand, famous ones, but a small, quiet sanctuary dedicated to Apollo, the god of music, poetry and prophecy. It is on the outskirts of the city, nestled in a grove of olive trees, its white marble columns gleaming in the moonlight. You and Damon stand at the entrance, and you feel a sense of profound peace wash over you. This is a place that is not owned by anyone. It belongs to the gods, and in that sense, it belongs to no one. Historians still argue whether the Greek gods were seen as truly divine, supernatural beings, or if they were more a part of the social and political fabric of the city-states, a way of giving a spiritual justification to a very earthly existence. You, a boy who has lost his freedom to the whims of a very earthly system, are not interested in the scholarly debate. You are just a boy, standing in the moonlight, seeking a moment of peace. You and Damon walk through the quiet sanctuary. The only sounds the rustle of leaves and the soft tread of your bare feet on the stone. You stop in front of a small bronze statue of Apollo, and you offer a quiet prayer. You don't ask for your freedom. You're not so foolish as to ask for something that is impossible. You just ask for the strength to endure, for the wisdom to find a path forward, and for the grace to be a good friend. You look at Damon, and you see the same silent prayer reflected in his eyes. You sit on a cold stone bench and you talk, not about your lessons or your master, but about your fears, your hopes and your dreams. You talk about the boys you used to be and the men you're becoming. For a fleeting moment, you're not Eric's or Damon. You're just two boys sitting in the moonlight trying to find a sense of self in a world that is trying to take it away from you. The temple is not just a place of worship. It is a sanctuary for your souls, a place where you can be honest and vulnerable with each other. The journey back is just as quiet as the journey there, but you're both different. You have had a taste of a different kind of freedom, a freedom of the spirit that is far more powerful than the freedom of the body. You are still in your gilded cage, but you have found a small hidden room in it, a place where you can be truly yourself. And as you sneak back into the silent halls of the estate, you know that you will never truly be the same again. You are not just a possession. You are a person with a soul, and that is a truth that no one can take away from you. The visit to the temple, a secret moonlit journey, leaves an indelible mark on your soul. You and Damon have found a shared sanctuary, a place of peace in a world of quiet turmoil. But as the months turn into a year, your life, once again, begins to change. The balance of power in the household is shifting subtly but inexorably, and you feel it in the quiet intimacy of your days with Lysias. He is no longer just your master, your teacher, your patron. He's becoming something more. A mainstream historical fact is that the pederastic relationships in ancient Greece were not static. They evolved over time, often moving from a mentorship to a more intimate companionship. You, a boy who's been educated to be a perfect companion, are now in the midst of this transition. You feel the weight of it in the way he looks at you, a gaze that is both a reflection of his own power and a quiet, yearning tenderness. Your lessons now take place in his private study, a room filled with scrolls and a single, low couch. The tutors are no longer a part of your daily life. It is just you and him, the student and the master, the boy and the man. He asks you to read to him, not from the histories or the tragedies, but from the more intimate, passionate works of the poets, the ones who wrote of love and desire. You read in a voice that has been trained to be clear and emotional, and you can feel the warmth of his gaze on you as you read. He touches your hand as he passes you a scroll, his fingers lingering on your skin, a silent, possessive gesture. He has not crossed a physical boundary, not in a way that is overt, but the intimacy is there, a palpable, unspoken thing that fills the room with a quiet tension. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that while the Greeks were open about their male-male relationships, they still had a strong social code that governed them. The older man, the Orestes, was expected to show a certain degree of self-control and to not be overly passionate, as this was seen as a sign of a lack of virtue. The younger boy, the Eromenos, was expected to be a chaste and innocent companion, at least in public. You and Lysias are living in the quiet, private world between these two rules, a world of unspoken glances and almost touches, a world where the lines are blurred and the rules are made up as you go along. Historians still argue whether the Eromenos had any agency in these relationships, or if they were just passive participants, beautiful objects to be used and discarded. Was there room for genuine affection, for a love that was not just a reflection of a man's power, but a connection between two souls? You, a boy living in the shadow of this very question, feel the ambiguity of it every day. You are taught to be beautiful, to be intelligent, to be a source of pleasure, but you're not asked what you want, what you feel, what you desire. You're a vessel, a beautiful, empty vessel, and you are being filled with a love that is not your own. Your friendship with Damon, once a source of quiet solace, is now a source of quiet tension. Lysias, in his own way, seems to be aware of your bond. He gives you less time with Damon now, finding a new set of lessons for him with a different tutor, a man who is far more strict and less kind. He is a man who believes that a boy in Damon's position should be seen and not heard, and that his education should be a matter of rote memorization, not a search for beauty or truth. The message is clear. Damon is a project, a work in progress, but you, Eryx, are the masterpiece. And a masterpiece, as you know, is a one-of-a-kind creation, and it belongs to a single owner. The gifts from Lysias become more personal now, more intimate. A delicate gold chain for your neck, a pair of sandals with intricate woven straps, a silver ring with his family's crest etched into it. They are not just tokens of his affection, they are a sign of his growing ownership. They are a way of saying, you are mine, you are a part of me, you are a reflection of my status and my love. And with each gift you feel the chains of your gilded cage tightening a little more, the weight of your new life becoming a little heavier. You begin to notice the small changes in his behaviour, the small gestures of affection that are a part of a more intimate relationship. He brushes a lock of hair from your face as you read, his fingers lingering on your skin. He rests his hand on the small of your back as you walk together through the garden. He smiles at you in a way that is both tender and possessive, a look that says, you are beautiful and you belong to me. You are a part of his world, not as a guest or a servant, but as a quiet, constant presence, a living embodiment of his love and his power. The life of a male concubine is not always a life of overt suffering. Sometimes it is a life of quiet luxury, of beautiful words and expensive gifts, of a love that is both a comfort and a confinement. It is a life of being a beautiful, sad ghost haunting a world that is not your own. And in the quiet of the night, as you lie on your soft bed, you feel a profound sense of sadness. You're not a person with a story, you are a story to be told, and your story, you know, is not your own. You're a character in a play that you did not write, and you're waiting with a mix of fear and dread to see what the next act will bring. You are a man in a world that sees you as a boy, a person who is owned, and you are trying with every fibre of your being to hold on to the last fading shreds of the boy you used to be. The arrival of the new boy, a youth named Calus, sends a cold shiver down your spine. He's not a boy in the way Damon was. He's an adolescent, a year or two older than you, with a dark, brooding intensity in his eyes. He's not a son of the city, but a boy from the wild, rugged highlands of Arcadia, a place known for its shepherds and its fierce, independent spirit. He is an untamed thing, and you, with your polished grace and your quiet compliance, are a very different kind of creature. A mainstream historical fact is that the Greeks had a complicated relationship with the peoples of the countryside. While they were seen as less sophisticated, they were also sometimes idealized as being more authentic, more pure than the city dwellers. Calus is an embodiment of that ideal. He's not a blank slate for Lysias to mould. He's a force of nature, and his presence in the household is an unsettling one. He's not here to be an Eromenos in the way you were. He's here as a rival. Your lessons, once a source of quiet solitude, are now a stage for a subtle, unspoken competition. Calus is not as quick with the rhetoric as you are. His accent is a thick, rustic one, and he struggles with the elegant, abstract language of philosophy. But he has a different kind of knowledge, a different kind of strength. He is a master of the javelin and the wrestling ring, and his body is a testament to a hard, physical life. He regards you with a quiet contempt, a look that says, "You are a weak, pampered thing. You have been tamed." A quirky, little-known tidbit about the ancient Greek world is that the concept of kalokagathia, the ideal of a beautiful and good man, was often seen as a balance between the intellectual and the physical. Lysias has a masterpiece in you, an intellectual and artistic wonder. But in Calus, he has a different kind of beauty, a beauty of a hard physical prowess. You're a work of art and Calus is a work of nature, and the two are now in silent, unspoken competition for your master's attention. Historians still argue whether the presence of a rival was a common feature of these relationships, a way for the older man to reinforce his power and to keep his young companion from becoming too comfortable or too demanding. Was Calus brought in as a genuine companion for Lysias, or was he a tool, a way of reminding you that you are in the end replaceable? You feel the reality of this debate every day, in the way Lysias divides his time between you and Calus, in the way he praises one of you for your intellect and the other for your strength. The gifts that once flowed from Lysias to you are now being divided. Calus receives a new shield with an intricate design, a pair of finely wrought bronze greaves. You, in turn, receive a new papyrus scroll, a finely carved lyre. You're still a valued possession, but you're no longer the sole possession. You're a part of a collection, and a collection, as you know, is a beautiful and dangerous thing. The air in the household is thick with unspoken tension. You and Calus never speak to each other. You communicate through the subtle language of glances and gestures, a quiet, resentful dance of two rivals. Damon, your friend, is now an afterthought, a boy who is no longer a part of the master's world. He is a ghost, a reminder of a simpler, less complicated time. You watch him from a distance, your heart aching with a quiet, shared sorrow. You begin to find yourself trying to prove your worth, trying to reassert your position as the most valued possession. You practice the lyre until your fingers bleed. You spend hours memorizing passages of poetry, and you debate with the tutors on topics that are far too complex for a boy your age. You're trying to be more beautiful, more intelligent, more everything. But you know, with a chilling certainty, that it is a losing game. You cannot compete with the untamed wildness of Calus. You are a creature of the city, of the intellect, and he is a creature of the earth. The most difficult moments are the ones when you see Lysias with Calus. They are not in the study, talking about philosophy. They are in the training yard, practicing with javelins. Lysias watches Calus with an expression you have never seen before, a look of pride and a kind of fierce, raw admiration. You realise, with a sick twist in your stomach, that Calus is a reflection of a different side of your master, a side that is not just intellectual and refined, but also powerful and primal. The life of a male concubine is not always a life of quiet luxury and profound loneliness. Sometimes it is a life of quiet desperation, of a constant, unspoken competition for a master's affection. It is a life of a soul being slowly suffocated by the very love it is meant to possess. You are Eryx, the beautiful and educated young man, but you're also a contender, a fighter, a man in a world that is trying to take your place. And you wonder, in the quiet of the night, if you can win a battle that you did not choose, a battle for a love that is not your own. The tension in the household is now a tangible, palpable thing, a thick, suffocating air that you breathe every day. The arrival of Caelus has not just introduced a rival, it has introduced a scholarly debate that you and Damon, in your quiet moments of stolen friendship, have been living for a long time. The conflict between the intellectual and the physical, the refined and the raw, is now a living, breathing thing. Historians still argue whether the concept of pederasty was a true form of love or a purely pedagogical one, a way for an older man to mentor a younger boy in the ways of virtue and civic life. Some scholars argue that the relationship with a boy like you, an intellectual and artistic companion, was the highest form, a love that transcended the physical. Others argue that the more rugged, physically oriented relationship, like the one Lysias is developing with Caelus, was a more authentic expression of male virility and power. You, a boy at the centre of this very debate, are a living testament to its complexity. A mainstream historical fact is that in ancient Greece, the love of a man for a boy was often seen as a way of transmitting arete, or excellence, from one generation to the next. You, in your own way, are a repository of Lysias's ideals of intellectual excellence. Caelus, in his own way, is a repository of his ideals of physical strength. You're both beautiful, but you're beautiful in very different ways, and you're both, in the end, reflections of the man who owns you. The quiet, almost tender moments with Lysias, the ones that once felt like a kind of comfort, now feel like a quiet betrayal. He still asks you to read to him in the evenings, but his gaze is no longer as focused, his attention no longer as rapt. You see his eyes dart to the doorway as if he is waiting for Caelus to appear, to bring a different kind of energy, a different kind of beauty into the room. He still touches your hand as he passes you a scroll, but the touch is no longer as lingering, as possessive. It is a touch of habit, a ghost of a love that is slowly fading. A quirky, little-known tidbit about the ancient Greek world is that the concept of a golden mean, a balance between two extremes, was a fundamental part of their philosophy. You and Caelus are living embodiments of two extremes, and Lysias, in his own way, is trying to find his own golden mean, a balance between the love of the mind and the love of the body. You are a representation of his past, of the man he has been, and Caelus is a representation of his future, of the man he is becoming. The competition with Caelus is not just for your master's affection, it is a competition for your very identity. You feel the constant, unspoken pressure to be more, to be better, to be worthy of your master's love. You spend hours in the gymnasium trying to match Caelus's strength, his physical prowess. You lift weights, you throw the javelin, you wrestle with the other boys in the yard. But you're not a creature of the earth. You're a creature of the mind, and your body, for all its grace and its beauty, is not built for the kind of brutal, physical work that Caelus was born into. You're out of place, an intellectual in a physical world, and you feel the weight of your own inadequacy. The rivalry comes to a head one afternoon in the courtyard. Lysias is watching you and Caelus as you practice. You're reciting a passage from a tragedy, your voice clear and emotional, your gestures graceful and refined. Caelus is practicing his javelin throw, his body a coiled spring of muscle and sinew. He throws the javelin, and it flies through the air, hitting the target with a loud, satisfying thud. Lysias, with a proud smile, claps his hands in appreciation. He turns to you and says, with a hint of a challenge in his voice, "Recite that again, Eryx, but this time with more passion. Make me feel the words." You do it, but your voice is no longer as clear, your gestures no longer as graceful. The words feel hollow, empty, and you feel a profound sense of failure. You have tried to be everything for him, but you have failed. You have tried to be both the mind and the body, and you have become neither. The life of a male concubine is not always a life of quiet luxury and profound loneliness. Sometimes it is a life of quiet desperation, of a constant unspoken competition for a master's affection. It is a life of a soul being slowly suffocated by the very love it is meant to possess. You are Eryx, the beautiful and educated young man, but you're also a contender, a fighter, a man in a world that is trying to take your place, and you wonder in the quiet of the night if you can win a battle that you did not choose, a battle for a love that is not your own. As you lie on your bed at night, you think of Damon, your friend, the boy you haven't seen in weeks. You wonder if he is happy, if he is still a boy with a wildness in his heart, a boy who is trying to find his way back to himself. You think of the temple you visited, the moonlight on the marble columns, the quiet of the sanctuary. You realise that you have lost your sanctuary, your friend, and your purpose. You're a beautiful, sad ghost, and you are haunting a world that is no longer your own. You're now in your late teens, on the cusp of manhood, and the world that was once so vast and terrifying has become small and confining. The lessons that once felt like a form of intellectual salvation now feel like a hollow exercise. Your body, which was once a boy's, is now a man's, with broader shoulders and a deeper voice, and you are beginning to outgrow the role of the Eromenos. A mainstream historical fact is that these relationships were not meant to last forever. They were a part of a boy's education, a rite of passage, and as the boy reached manhood, the relationship was expected to change, or to end entirely. You're at the precipice of that change, and you feel a profound sense of uncertainty. The competition with Calus has not ended, it has simply evolved. He too is becoming a man, and he's still the Master's preferred companion for the gymnasium and the hunting grounds. You're still the Master's preferred companion for the study and the symposium. You're two different sides of the same coin, and you are both, in your own way, living testaments to your Master's tastes. But the coin, you know, is losing its value. You are a man in a role meant for a boy, and you feel the weight of that anachronism every day. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that in ancient Greece the transition from boyhood to manhood was often marked by a series of rituals and social changes. For a boy in your position, however, there was no such clear marker. You are a man, but you're still in a role that is defined by your youth. You are in a sort of social purgatory, a place where you are no longer a boy, but you're not yet a man either. And you feel the frustration of that position in your every waking moment. Historians still argue whether the end of a pederastic relationship was a quiet and amicable transition, or if it was a source of great social and emotional turmoil. Was the older man expected to provide for his former companion, or was the boy left to fend for himself? You, a man who is now in this very position, feel the weight of this question. Lysias has made it clear that you will be provided for, that you are a part of his household for life, but you also know that your purpose, the reason you were brought here, is fading away. You're no longer the most beautiful thing in the house, the most treasured possession. You are a part of the past, and Calus is the future. The gifts from Lysias are no longer personal or intimate, they are practical now. A new cloak to protect you from the winter rains, a pair of sturdy sandals for walking on the unpaved streets of Athens. They are the gifts of a man to a servant, not the gifts of a patron to a companion. And with each gift, you feel the finality of your new role, the quiet, unspoken truth that you are no longer the centre of his world. The loneliness you once felt is now compounded by a new, more bitter feeling. The loneliness of being a ghost in your own home. You walk through the halls and you feel as if no one sees you. You're a part of the furniture, a beautiful, sad fixture that is no longer a source of wonder or delight. You watch from a distance as Lysias and Calus walk through the garden, their laughter echoing in the quiet air. You see the pride in your master's eyes, the fierce, possessive love that he once reserved for you, and you feel a sharp pang of envy and a profound sense of loss. You're no longer a boy with a future to be shaped. You're a man with a past that is slowly being erased. You're still Eryx, but you're also Lycidas, and the two names are at war within you. You're a man of intellect and grace, but you're also a man with a wild, untamed heart. You're a man in a cage, and you are trying, with every fibre of your being, to find a way to be free. The only solace you find now is in the small, forgotten corners of the household, the places where you can be alone with your thoughts. You spend hours in the library, not reading from the poetry or the histories, but from the philosophical texts, the ones that speak of virtue and justice, of freedom and dignity. You find yourself drawn to the words of the Stoics, the philosophers who believed that a man could find peace and happiness in a world that was often cruel and unjust. They taught that a man's true wealth was his character, not his possessions, and that a man's true freedom was in his mind, not in his body. You, a man who has lost his freedom and his possessions, find a powerful, undeniable truth in their words. The tragic life of a male concubine is not a life of overt cruelty. It is a life of quiet luxury, of beautiful words and expensive gifts. But it is also a life of a soul slowly being suffocated by the very love it is meant to possess. It is a life of a man who is a boy, a person who is a possession, and a soul that is trying to find a way to be free. You are a man on the cusp of a new life, a life that is not your own, a life that has been chosen for you. And you know, with a chilling certainty, that you must find a way to break free. You must find a way to be a free man, a man who is in control of his own destiny. And you wonder, in the quiet of the night, if it is even possible. The day of your final decision dawns grey and cool, a mirror for the quiet tension that has been building within you for months. You are now a man, and the final piece of your life's puzzle is being put into place. Lysias, your master, your patron, your former lover, calls you to his study. You go, your heart a steady drumbeat in your chest. You know, with a chilling certainty, what this meeting is about. It is the culmination of your life in his household, the final act in a play that you did not write. A mainstream historical fact is that for a wealthy man to grant a former companion his freedom was a sign of his immense generosity, and a testament to the young man's virtue. It was a way of saying, I have shaped you into a man, and now you are ready to stand on your own 2 feet. Lysias, in his own way, is doing just that. He is granting you your freedom. He sits at his desk, and he looks at you, not with the old possessive gaze, but with a look of quiet, detached satisfaction. He says in a voice that is both kind and formal, Eryx, you have been a good companion. You have learned all that I have taught you, and you have become a man of virtue and intellect. It is time for you to live your own life. I am granting you your freedom. The words hang in the air, a beautiful, impossible gift. He's not just giving you your freedom, he is giving you a choice. He has arranged for you to have a small inheritance, enough to start your own business as a scribe or a teacher. He has also offered you a place in his household as a freedman, a valued servant who will be provided for the rest of his life. A quirky, little-known tidbit is that while a freedman had more rights than a slave, he was still not a full citizen. He could own property and conduct business, but he could not vote, hold public office, or participate in the democratic life of the city. You are being offered a kind of freedom, but it is a freedom that is still bound by the rigid social structure of ancient Athens. You are a man, but you're not truly free. Historians still argue whether the concept of freedman was a genuine path to a new life, or a way for the elite to maintain control over a large and often talented population of non-citizens. Was Lysias's generosity a true act of kindness, or was it a way of keeping you close, of maintaining a claim on the beautiful object he had created? You, a man at the centre of this very debate, feel the weight of its ambiguity. You are being given a choice, but the choices are both a kind of freedom and a kind of confinement. You look at the man who has been your world for so long, the man who took you from your home and shaped you into something you no longer recognise. You think of the dusty streets of your old neighbourhood, and you think of the quiet elegance of his home. You think of your friendship with Damon, and you think of the silent rivalry with Calus. You think of the man you were and the man you have become, and you know, with a chilling certainty, that you cannot accept his offer. You cannot be a freedman in a world that you have haunted as a ghost. You cannot live a life that is a constant reminder of what you have lost. You say, in a voice that is clear and steady, "Thank you, master, but I cannot stay." He looks at you with a flicker of surprise, a flash of a look that you have not seen in a long time. It is a look of genuine hurt, of a love that is both possessive and true. "Why?" he asks, his voice a low rumble. "This is a good life. You will be provided for. You will want for nothing." You look at him and you say, "I want my own life. I want to live in the world that I have only ever been a spectator of. I want to be a man, not a beautiful thing that is owned. I want to be Lycidas again. The name, son of a wolf, feels foreign on your tongue, a word from a life that is now a distant memory. But it is your name, your true name. and it is a powerful, undeniable truth. He looks at you for a long moment, a look of a man who is both proud and heartbroken. He nods, a slow, deliberate movement. "So be it," he says. "The inheritance is yours. Go, and may the gods smile upon you." So, you turn to leave, and you do not look back. You walk out of the study, a free man. You walk through the halls of the estate, the marble floors cool under your bare feet, the sound of the fountain a distant whisper. You are a ghost, haunting the place where you were a boy, and you're walking out into a world that is a complete, utter unknown. You do not know what the future holds. You do not know if you will be a successful scribe or a starving artist. You do not know if you will be a part of the city or a ghost haunting its streets. But you know, with a profound, unshakable certainty, that you are free. The tragic life of a male concubine is a life of a soul that is a prisoner in its own body, but your life, you know, is about to begin. You're a man now, and you are ready to face the world. The sun is setting as you walk out of the gates of the estate, and the dust of the streets feels rough and real under your feet. The air, once thick with the scent of jasmine, is now thick with the scent of roasted meat and the shouts of the vendors. This is the city of your childhood, the city that you left behind, and it is here, waiting for you, a place of noise and light and life. You're a man in a new world, and you're ready to find your own story, to live your own life, to be your own person. And you are, for the first time in a very long time, a little bit afraid and a little bit hopeful. And so, we leave Lycidas, or Eryx, on the unpaved streets of Athens, a man with a past he can never fully escape, and a future that is entirely his to shape. His story is a whisper in the wind, a quiet footnote in the grand, sweeping epic of ancient Greece. It's a reminder that history isn't just about the rise and fall of empires or the triumphs of great men, but about the small, quiet lives that were lived in the shadows. It's a reminder that freedom, for all its beauty, was a fragile, precious thing, and that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought with swords and shields, but with quiet resolve and a single, brave choice. As the final light fades from the sky and the stars begin to emerge, let your mind drift from the marble halls and dusty streets of Athens. Let the echoes of his story soften and the quiet beauty of the night settle around you. Breathe in the stillness and let the long, unbroken narrative of history give way to the gentle, calming rhythm of your own sleep. You have journeyed far tonight, but now it is time to come home. Close your eyes, let the soft hum of the world fade, and find your own quiet peace.